Yeah, Fatalofa, it's Tim Tufuga here. I'm at my house and I'm wanting to talk to you about what I actually do. I, uh, I spent a few years studying uh, counterterrorism, and that's my academic background. I actually have been following the Ukrainian conflict with some interest, and from a Pacific Island standpoint, yeah, as a Samoan, we are always always involved in some international incidents in one form or another. I have been talking recently about the Ukrainian conflict as Irving Janis would consider it as groupthink. Now, if you study international relations or national security matters, you understand what I'm talking about. So, Irving Janis discussed the issue of how groupthink would affect public policy or any military policy with regards to a cabal of like-minded people would engage in a conflict that in the long term is actually a fiasco. Now, Ukraine is a case in point. Now, my interest, I will be focusing more on the Bakhmut area of operations that is currently in the middle of contest at the moment. Now, it's the 30th of December 2022. Bakhmut is in the hearts and minds of many people within Ukraine and the Donbass region and within Russia. However, what seems to be omitted is the vested interests within the externalities of the conflict, which has a rippling effect within the region. For instance, in Bakhmut in itself, there are numerous self-autonomous military units from various military groups that are not directly related to Ukraine. For instance, there's two battalions within Klishishka and Opitny within the southern outskirts of Bakhmut that are made up of Chechens military fighters from the government in exile Chechen Republic of Ishkeria. Now, these people have declared themselves as a Caucasus emirate and as an Islamic republic. They had also advocated the separation from the Russian Federation, of which there has been some conflicts. The first Chechen War was in 1994, which ended in 1997, which resulted in the Battle of Grozny, which was Yeltsin's failure to overwhelm the bottleneck superior tactical fighting techniques of the Chechens. So the Battle of Grozny led to a ceasefire, and subsequently that ceasefire would eventually lead up to the second Chechen conflict, in which the Russians would improve upon their mistakes from the first Chechen conflict with the Battle of Grozny. And obviously they had got rid of many of the leaders of the then Ishkeria Republic, and to the point that the consequence of the second Chechen conflict was the establishment of the Kadyrov regime, which now exists since 2007. The Kadyrov Chechens are now fighting with the Russians. Obviously, we've seen that on media, mainstream media and social media. But what I would like to draw your attention in Bakhmut in particular is the influence of Chechnya and Georgia. 2008, the Georgian conflict was an internal conflict that Russia partook in a peacekeeping capacity with regards to the South Ossetia and Abkhazia separatists who were fighting to attain their self-autonomy, in which Russia stepped in and in doing so represented and defended the Abkhazia self-autonomous nation or people, and the South Ossetians. Now, the South Ossetians are not part of the Russian Federation, they're part of Georgia. Now, they're fighting for their unification with North Ossetia, obviously, which is part of the Russian Federation. Now, these complexities of regional paroxysms and conflicts within the areas has caused quite an amount of regional anxiety for the Russian Federation. Their purpose, such as the Georgian conflict, was to settle matters and to sort out the Georgians. Obviously, the Georgians have now decided to join in the fight with Ukraine. Your enemy is my enemy, makes you my friend. Georgia goes to Ukraine. Similarly with Chechens. Now, the government in exile, the Ishkeria Chechens, have done likewise with Ukraine. Your enemy is my enemy, makes you my friend. They're now on the front lines in Bakhmut, and I will discuss this further as I look at my map now. Without further ado, I'll go on to that.
Zalafa. Now, this is the map of Ukraine and the Donbass, and these are the military units that are currently deployed on the 30th of December 2022. Now, if I zoom in from the larger map and onto the areas of operations within Bakhmut, we could just zoom right into here. Areas of interest is the Ukrainian forces, which are in blue. These are the illustrations of the military strengths in numbers and the sizes. Now, to your right, you see two icons of military units of the Russians and DPR and the Wagner group. On this map, you will notice that there are two rectangles, boxes for the Russians, and to your left, you'll notice in the blue, in Bakhmut's outer suburbs, you'll notice these maps of boxes, rectangles. Now, X's, rectangles, illustrates on military terms infantry. So these are infantry in the X's, and these here are mechanized with the oblong circles within the rectangle boxes with an X. So it's a mechanized infantry unit. Now this is what I'm talking about, the 30th Mechanized Brigade. And on top of every box is the icons of the unit size. So in X, above the rectangle box indicates the size, which is a brigade, anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 troops. And if you look at this box, the Georgian Legion, which is in fact a battalion with two stripes above the box. You notice another battalion, the Sheikh Mansour Battalion, which is a Chechen voluntary army, or not army, I should say, it's a battalion, which is about 1,000 troops. So you will notice the size of these troops. Now in Klishchiivka, there's another Chechen group, which is the Dudayev Chechen Peacekeeping Battalion. Now that's about 1,000. So you have that, and in support is a brigade, Ukrainian Territorial Defense Brigade. Then you have the tactical group, which is Adam. Now that is an interesting group. It's the size of a company, which is about 100 to 200 soldiers. That could be the Mozart group. It's probably about 200 of them. Then there's the 53rd Ukrainian Mechanized Brigade in support of the frontline Chechen soldiers, the battalions, which is about 1,000 or 2,000, who are no doubt entrenched along the trench lines, on the defense lines along here in Klishchiivka. Now Klishchiivka is currently being attacked by this division of Wagner Group. Now there's two X's above the box, which means that it is quite a significant number, up to 30,000. In support of the Wagner Group is the 106th Guards Airborne Division, again another 20 to 30,000. So that's about 60,000 Russians up against a similar number of Ukrainians. So it's almost slightly more in the Ukrainians, because they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 brigades, and then you've got a battalion, and another brigade. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 brigades. So we're looking at probably about 30,000, 32,000 in the southern outskirts of Bakhmut. In Klishchiivka you would have another, well, that's a company, a brigade, another brigade, and another brigade, which is a rapid reactionary brigade of the 4th National Guard Brigade of Ukraine. And then right in the front is a battalion, which is about 2,000 at most. It'll be a lot less than that after the campaign by the Wagner and the 106 Airborne, which is a light, small armed, highly mobilized air division of soldiers. They're small arms, very rapid response, and they're pretty good. So they're engaged in jungle warfare around this area, in this no residential zones, so there's a lot of fighting there leading up to the residential zones in Klishchiivka. And then that's heading into to the southwest of Bakhmut. It is believed that the 109th Territorial Defence Brigade and this brigade, the 30th Mechanized Brigade, is engaging Russian Wagner troops, which are predominantly made up of Serbians, Belarusian and Russians, prisoners, just a motley crew of mercenaries from Russia. They include Syrians and other groupings, including Chechens, maybe, but the Chechens tend to be congregated elsewhere with the Kadyrov mob. Now, I wanted to talk about the southern outskirts of Opitny, which has indicated that the Chechens and the Georgians are involved. Now, this is interesting, since the Sheikh Mansour battalion is basically a private army, and the Sheikh Mansour is obviously in honor of their sponsor, which is a sheikh from Abu Dhabi, the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Arab of Emirates, whom is no doubt supporting the Chechen Republic of Ishkeria, which is a declared Emirate, Caucasus Emirate group. This group is quite interesting from the Russians' point of view, because they have engaged the Russians as part of the notorious ISIS pact now in Syria. So they've met the Russians in Syria as part of the ISIS group, and that's been an interesting story in itself in terms of counterterrorism perspective. The Chechen Republic of Ishkeria has been responsible for numerous alleged terrorist activities, such as the Beslan 2004, in which hundreds of school kids and troops and other people were killed in almost a disastrous Spetsnaz operation. Similarly to the Moscow theatre campaign, in which 50 Chechens terrorists were neutralized, or at least committed suicide with self-exploding IEDs, vests that they wore in order to commit suicide within the Moscow theatre. 50 of them were killed, half a company, basically just over a platoon worth of Chechen fighters. So Ishkeria is a government in exile from the Kadyrov government, which is the current Chechen government that's been in power since 2007. We know the Kadyrov's Chechens groups are in Ukraine. They were primarily involved in Mariupol and events through Kherson. Recently they were targeted by the Ukrainians, and they're not engaged with the Wagner group in Bakhmut presently. Instead, the Chechen Republic of Ishkeria battalions of some 2,000 troops are spread across the Klishchiska to the southwest of Bakhmut, and to the north is north of the south of Bakhmut is the Opitny area, which is currently being attacked and gradually occupied by or liberated, I should say, by the Wagner group. presently, as I can see, the Bakhmut campaign is grinding ever so slowly, but by the looks of things, I would suggest that the Sheikh Mansour Battalion and the Georgian groups will be overwhelmed by the Wagner and the... Okay, further south in the conflict, near Donetsk city, past Horlivka. This is where you will notice that there's numerous battalions of soldiers that are designated as bars. Now, bars are battalions of the volunteers. Oh, sorry, the conscripts. The recent recruited armed forces of the conscripted 300,000 or so. Presently, there's about 20 or so bars, which are the army reserves that were conscripted about 2 months ago. They're actually right in the front line in Marinka, and there's bars 23, bars 11, and actually they're supported by the Spetsnaz, which are the special forces, the elite brigade of special forces. The Spetsnaz brigades are spread across Lugansk area and just south of the Donetsk city. So from this standpoint, the deployment of the 300,000 Russian conscripted reserves are actively engaged along the front line, according to this map. Now, their number is actually less than the 300,000 for obvious reasons. Obviously, they're on rotations and others are deployed elsewhere on reserves, so they'll be coming in to the front line momentarily, no doubt, on a staggered deployment. Over here you see this whole amalgam of boxes of Bakhmut, concentration of Ukrainian forces that deceptively reveals that there's more of them. Actually, they're smaller sizes, but they're self-autonomous military units. That's the only reason why that there's so many separate boxes there, as opposed to the Wagner group and the 106 Guards Airborne Division, which are more under a singular tutelar control or chain of command. That's the reason why it's not many boxes, as you would with the Ukrainians, which is a weakness from a military standpoint, because there's no clear there's no clear chain of command in that a chaotic situation here in Bakhmut, which makes it easier for the Russians to undermine this amalgam of separate self-autonomous units, military units. They can't possibly coordinate cohesively in this context. So it's the old divide and conquer by the Russians. So, yeah, loa manatule molnei vava ingai le tulanga le i Bakhmut, i le kawale i Ukraine. Yeah, o lava foi sia kalangoanga molnei i kola soifua.